Adds up to 22 feet more in just 30 reps. What does that add up to in a year? Take somebody's average pull-up training, doing about 50 pull-ups a day, which I recommend to a lot of people, 3 days a week, and we'll say you're doing this 11 months a year. So you're pretty much spot on most of the weeks, but you took, holiday time off, but you're training for 11 months of the year. What does that add up to? 50 pull-ups, 3 days a week, 11 months a year. 7,200 pull-ups. Whoa, that's a lot of pull-ups. Imagine you were doing a rowing machine and it was calculating how far you were pulling, and you're getting out 22 feet further than the guy next to you just after 30 pumps. How far behind are you going to be after 7,200 pumps of that rowing machine cycle, which is essentially exactly what this is. If you're doing like a rowing machine, or if you're on a rowing machine, or if you're actually in a boat doing crew, this is your range of motion. Somebody's doing these little shorties and you're doing full range of motion. Okay, so after 7,200 pulls, how far behind are you after a year? Let's put them up. We're gonna have a race. Here we go. Boom. After one pull-up, two pull-ups, three pull-ups, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom. You can see after 8 pumps, strongest Omari is getting out there. How far? He moved 10 yards. 46 inches times 8 is 10 yards. 37 inches times 8 is 8 yards. Already, strongest Omari is 2 yards ahead of you. And guess what? Doing those little shorty pulls, you're never going to catch up. You're not going to get as strong and you're not going to go as far. So what does that add up to a year? You think we're going to measure it in feet? Think we're going to measure it in yards? We're going to measure it in miles, okay? After a year of 7,200 pull-ups, strongest Omari pulls 5.2 miles versus weaker Omari who pulls 4.2 miles. The boy is stronger because in the same amount of time and the same amount of reps with these little muscles there, he's pulling himself a mile further by the mere difference of looking forward as he pulls versus looking up and just barely touching the chin to the top of the bar. That little difference adds up to a mile over the course of the year if you're doing even an intermediate level of training, which is 50 pull-ups 3 days a week. All right, so the point being here is you're gonna do the same number of reps anyway. You're a full mile behind. Now, if it was a mile behind and it was like you're on a bike and you're a mile behind, fine. If it was a mile behind and it was like you're jogging and you're a mile behind, that's not that much. You're a mile behind by something that you can only move by moving your arms. That's like if you're a mile behind walking on your hands. That is a long distance for something where your entire body weight is on just, your forearms, a little bit of your bicep, and this little upper back muscle. Your entire weight is being propelled forward by those small muscles, right? You don't have a bike to cruise you along and coast along. You don't have the momentum of you running, because in a pull-up, you stop your momentum every time. You don't have that forward propulsion that you do in running, where once you get going, your own momentum and your own weight actually helps you out. Not so in a pull-up. You go up and down. So every time you come down, you got to fight gravity again to get back up. So that's actually even more so than walking on your hands, because walking on your hands, you got inertia, right? Once you take the first step, the second one is easier. So because your body wants to fall anyway, so just keep going with it. A pull-up, you don't have that. You have to regenerate your own power every time. So to be a mile behind in something where you're generating your own power is immensely huge amount of strength that you're building that somebody else is not building just because of that. You think people are like, oh, that doesn't make that much of a difference? I'm telling you right now, it's a mile difference over the course of a year. All right, so that was comparing strongest Omari to weaker Omari. If we compare strongest Omari to the weakest Omari, who you remember had a range of motion of 33.4 inches. After a year of doing pull-ups, weakest Omari has only gone 3.8 miles. So he's almost a mile and a half behind. If we convert that to yards really quickly, you can see strongest Omari is 9,110 yards out. Weakest Omari is 6,681 yards out. That is 2,400 yards behind. 2,400 yards behind. That's like, to me, that's mind boggling. If you ever thought that you were training side by side with somebody, and you could actually be training, these two guys could be training side by side. They literally could be. There's guys that I've trained with side by side who are like, I'm going to do the same reps as you. But they're not going to do them the way that I did. So they're going to do it their way, right? Which is going to be shorting themselves on every single rep. These two guys could be training side by side, literally doing the exact same number of reps, showing up every day, same day at the park, head to head, grunting, rah, 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 grinding. But one guy is going 9,000 yards in those same days working out, and the other guy is going 6,700 yards. So he's like 2,500 yards behind. And you think the guy who's 2,500 yards behind has any chance of out-repping the other guy? No chance. He's got no chance. He has never even generated the strength to go the distance that the other guy has. So that's why it's no contest, right? It's no contest. And so those two guys are basically two different versions of you, right? One of you has an open mentality to accept and understand what it means to grow and to learn, and the other of you just wants to go through the motions and not really think about what it takes to become a better calisthenics athlete, right? So those are two versions of you that you either elevate and cultivate or you squash and dismiss, right? So you cultivate the type of inner mentality and characteristics that you want to take life in your calisthenics life and in who you are as a person.